We'll now call the meeting to order. The time is 5 o'clock. We will now proceed with item 2, approval of the agenda, that the agenda for the Prescott Heritage Committee meeting of September 21st, 2023 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Lee, seconded by Louis. All in favor? Motion carried. Are there any declarations of interest tonight? Seeing none. Item 4.1 is a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. I have a recommendation that reads that the Prescott Heritage Committee minutes dated July 20th, 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this motion? Moved by Louis, seconded by Ray. All in favor? Motion carried. Item 5.1 is a staff report from the clerk, Lindsay Velkamp. This report is for information only. Ms. Velkamp, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as the committee is aware, changes to the Ontario Heritage Act have required the Prescott Heritage Committee to review the 25 properties identified within town as having cultural heritage value or interest. The first grouping before you this evening include the Presbyterian Church in Nance, 388 Centre Street, 491 James Street West, 590 George Street, and 408 East Street. Included in the report, you will find the recommendation from the Grenville County Historical Society. Unfortunately, no one from the Historical Society was able to attend this evening. I did speak with Fraser Laxninger, and he did say that any questions that from this evening's meeting, I can relay on to him, and he can respond, and I can forward those around. And excuse me, going forward, as long as we don't schedule a meeting for the third Thursday of a month, Fraser will be able to attend. So these reports are brought to you by the Grenville Historical Society, as well as that information. We do have property owners that are in the gallery this evening. Our suggestion is that the committee discuss the properties. No decision is to be made this evening. Any questions can be relayed on to the Historical Society, and then the property owners will have an opportunity to provide comment, ask questions. And then before you, you will also see the checklist for determining the criteria for the property. We're suggesting that committee members take the information from this evening home along with the checklist, go through it, reflect, and then answer the criteria and submit them about a week before the next scheduled meeting. And then those responses will be put together and then brought forward at the next meeting to then be considered along with the next 5 properties. And included with the report is, in addition to the current recommendation from the Grenville County Historical Society, are the original reports that were written from 2013 and 2014, just for information. My report, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to ask or answer. Thank you.
Okay, so the first house property that we're looking at is 461 Centre Street, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. Does the committee have any comments or questions on this property? Lee?
Is there anybody here from?
They're over there.
Okay, good. Quite frankly, I read everything that we had in the book that we have in here that was provided. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's obviously a very historical building, important to Prescott, to its streetscape. Unless the people you would like to call on, it's your discretion, of course, as chair. They may have some input.
Yeah. Does anybody else on the committee have any comments or anything before we go to the property owner? No? Marilyn and Susan, do you have any comments?
On the address you got, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church and Manse, we don't own the Manse anymore. It was sold, so I don't know if that has to be taken off or any bearing on it or not.
Yeah, you mentioned there was one part of the manse that's historical.
Mhm.
I don't know if the owner would want to be involved in that or not. A special interest is the center half round dormer window on the front. You might want to ask them
Yeah,
if they want to be included in that.
okay, we'll make note of that.
I think when it was severed off many years ago, they did an extremely good job of keeping the integrity of the building. Although the walkway, I think it was the walkway between the church and the manse that you just referred to. Obviously, most of that is gone, but I think they've done a great job in maintaining property. And what are you doing with all those barrels in the, or not barrels, but at a garden?
We're creating landscaping.
Oh, terrific.
Joe had some input on that. Yeah.
Oh, good.
It is done.
We're gonna try and get it done here.
Yeah.
And then several people have approached us.
You know, the Tim Hortons crowd has speculated about 50 different ideas about what you were doing. Not one of them came up with that one, though.
Tell them to bring a shovel and.
It's gonna be like a sitting area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good for you.
And then any of the stone that's left, if there's any
Yeah,
left,
yeah.
it's being
Maybe sold, yeah.
maybe sold to the gentleman that's doing
The
the,
Forwarders Museum, is it?
the old Forwarders Museum down there.
He wants to put it in his windowsill.
Do the windowsills.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm pretty sure it's the original stone.
Yeah, the original stone on the steps. And that we're doing a plaque that's in memory of.
Yeah, when we're dedicating it to him.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Just, if I may, just as a note of interest on that stone and the steps. Back in the 80s, when I had the furniture store and the carpet store down the street, you had me carpet those steps with outdoor.
Is that right? Oh, yeah.
And I remember at the time that they were, you know, cracked and not in the greatest of shape. And I guess they'd been worn to the point where they were slippery. So
Yeah.
the carpet did the job for a few years, but I think you made the right decision with the cement.
Yeah. And this year we had the bell tower all redone and that, and the bell, the original bell. We're having a special dedication ceremony on this Sunday regarding the bell tower. And the bell that used to swing can't swing anymore because it's not aligned properly, but there's a second bell there that had that. They've got the rope down, the people that did the work, put the rope down, and it's a stationary one that.
It's actually the one they used for funerals.
Yeah,
It's a smaller bell and it's got a dollar sound. It's one they use for funerals, but we're able to
Yeah.
get it working.
Mhm. So this will be the first time it's been run in years and years, so.
Well, living in the west end of town, I hope you don't ring it too often.
I don't want to compete with the train whistles.
No.
Okay. Matthew?
I did want to note that the Historical Society, while they recommended that the church, they recommended that the manse not be historical designation. So there's just that slight differentiation between the two.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I should have mentioned in my report that I am putting up on the screen, you'll see an image of the property as well as the recommendation. And then off to the side is the criteria that was filled out by the Granville County Historical Societies. That'll help you kind of see how they got to their recommendation.
Okay. So you guys don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to. Okay? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So the second property is 388 Center Street. Does the committee have any comments or discussion? That's the one that's directly across from the church.
You're right, well, diagonal.
Am I going to say something about my house?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This house is 4,300 square feet. If you would designate heritage, I can't do anything with it. I tried through council, well, not through council, through the building association to do 2 or 3 different things with this house and I've been turned down. The back of the house is not heated. Hydro had to be updated. A bunch of other things had to do. They've been maid's quarters since I can't afford a maid. There's no heat back there. It's useless. The house is falling down when I bought it. If I hadn't bought it at that time, there wouldn't be a house left. The beams were going in the attic. The water was running down into the living room. The walls were down in the basement. The house was a disaster. I just got stuck with my daughter, 2 children, and my son with nowhere to live because the deal on another house fell through. Never would have bought that house. So now after putting another $250,000 into it, which I have done, I still can't use the house for any specific use. I tried to put in an escape room because that would be a whole lot of fun, and I think the town would have really done well with it. It would have been all kinds of fun to have a haunted escape room in that house.
Oh, yeah.
I was turned down. I tried to do a tea room. I was turned down. Now I'm going to do a bed and breakfast out of it, but I will probably be turned down if you make it historical. In other words, I live there alone in a 4,300 square foot house that I can't afford to keep. Even working, I can't afford to keep it. The heating bills are outrageous. The hydro bills are outrageous. The property taxes are crazy because it's so big. I've tried to sell it on 3 different occasions. Nobody wants it. It will cost another $150,000 to make that house certainly completely livable. The very back part that has no roof is falling down. It's going to cost $25,000 at least just to keep it standing. This thing's going to come down, probably. We have tried to fix it, to keep it up. We do want to keep it up. The whole frontage is beautiful. It's got a fireplace in it. It's very historical. It's very, very nice. It's a lot of money to keep that property. And it is.
Yeah.
If you make it historical, I'll put it for sale tomorrow. I'll sell it for a song because I can't live in it with it being historical. I can't do anything with it. I don't mind if it's a property of interest. That makes sense to me. I've even left the windows, which are original. I left all the woodwork, which was original. It took me the whole winter to sand down all the woodwork in that house and refinish the whole bottom floor. And now I'm starting on the top floor and stuff. Because it was destroyed, the house was full of squirrels.
Oh,
The whole house, when I moved in, there was 150 squirrels living in that house.
my gosh.
No cats. So it was ruined. The house was destroyed. And since then, we put tremendous amount of money, work, effort, and it is paint, removing wallpaper that's been destroyed, fixing ceilings, doing the things like that. We rebuilt the chimney, which we did get a permit for, but the house has had tremendous damage. Now it's starting to be that I can put a bed and breakfast in. I do have to have a furnace company coming next Friday, but you make this historical, I can't do any of this stuff. And this is my argument. And if I move, they're gonna change the windows. They're gonna wreck the house. They're gonna paint it inside with white paint. They're gonna ruin all that woodwork. And probably none of you have been inside the house. The house is phenomenal. The woodwork alone inside the house is absolutely gorgeous. It's all original. It's in beautiful condition. We keep it that way. You know, it really is. The vault door, I have to spray it with oil all the time because it was really, really a mess when I got it. But the ceiling in the vault's coming down, so that has to be fixed. All this has to be done. If you maybe get permits, other people and stuff, somebody's gonna go in there and they're just gonna make it modern. And that's exactly what they're gonna do with that house. They're gonna modernize it. They're gonna put tile floor in, they're gonna paint the wood, they're gonna do all that stuff. And you're gonna have an awful time stopping them.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Me, I redid all the pine floors, they're beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous. and stuff, and put in tin ceilings, and they're beautiful. They look great, but I don't want a heritage.
No.
A house of interest is fine, because we definitely want to keep it historical. I definitely do. I don't want to change the house. I love the house. But I'm not, you make it historical, forget it, so. Because it's going to cost me a fortune. I was already told that. I have to get a historical engineer to do anything to that house if it becomes historical. Even put up a railing, we had to put a railing into the attic. The attic stairs, we had to repair them and put a railing. There was a railing, but there's not now. It didn't come out at some point. We put a railing in. Well, I don't want to get a historical engineer to put in a railing in my attic.
Yeah.
So
we'll just take note of your comments in that, okay? Like Lindsay said, there's not a decision being made tonight. We'll just take note of your comments. Anybody else have anything to say?
So what would you do with it today if you were able to?
I want to make it into a bed and breakfast. There's 2 bedrooms upstairs in the back part. They've all been, the wallpaper's been taken out, the plaster's been all repaired, and we painted it, but we're leaving the lath and plaster. There's actually one wall done in wallpaper that's original, and I've been able to keep that. It was probably never damaged, and it's beautiful. It's powder blue and white, and it's lovely, and it is back from the 1800s. The doors are all original in the house. We haven't changed the doors at all or anything like that. And and it has a room downstairs. The plaster ceiling was completely destroyed, so we just covered it. That's all we did. We didn't do anything because the lath was in gorgeous shape. There used to be a wood stove back there, and it burnt. So the whole back of the house was filled with soot, and it was this deep on the floor when I got the house. So that all had to be cleaned out, taken away, all re-plastered, all redone and stuff, but we've kept it original. I've got my pictures in my phone, what we've done to it. It's all redone, but we'd like to make it into a bed and breakfast. There's
And what prevented that?
Pardon, what's
What
preventing that?
prevented?
Because any extra work that needs done to do that, I'm going to have to get building permits, other issues, and you can turn me down because it's a historical house.
So is it a zoning issue? The zoning issue is not an issue?
If I may, through you, Madam Chair. The first 2 items that she brought up, the escape room and the tea room. In both cases, those were a zoning issue. The reality is it's zoned R1. And in general, we don't allow that in there. Now, we didn't tell her no. What we told her is that planning had to be resolved in relation to it, and it just couldn't happen overnight. But it wasn't like it can't happen, period. It would need to be rezoned and it'd have to be approved. And the same thing even with the bed and breakfast. This is the first I'm hearing about the bed and breakfast today, but I'd like to think.
Last year.
Okay, well.
I did. Well, it takes that long to fix, believe me, to do anything to that house.
But that's what I'm saying. So to date, as far as I know, the only work that's been done in the house that's required a building permit has been the chimneys, which she got a building permit for. But yeah, we'd have to take a look at bed and breakfast to see if it meets the zoning, and I think it does, but I'd have to double check it, so.
Yeah, that was my belief too, that a bed and breakfast would probably be able to.
Yeah, again, provided she has adequate parking and stuff like that, because that's all in there, right? So.
Yeah.
And
But they've also taken away 2 of my parking spots. My 2 parking spots on the side of the house are gone now due to bus zoning. So I have no parking on either side of the street. Like on both sides of the street, I have no parking on either side. Now, I do have a double lot. I do have room for parking. But it is a pain in the butt because that was taken away, because you can't just park, get into the house for any reason and then leave again. You have to go in the back and do the porch and everything else. I don't understand why the zoning couldn't have been for after 5 o'clock on weekends, like that you can park on weekends, like it makes sense.
Part of the parking issue was church services and the parking that.
But then they can't park there either.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And the issue with that narrow street was putting a fire truck down the middle of it on Sundays. Yeah. Whether it's a good reason or a bad reason, that was
Don't
part
want
of
to
the
talk about the
reason.
church. Those steel things up there, I'm telling you, I just like, well, anyway.
So historical designation doesn't absolutely forbid things to be done to the building. It does, I don't think, am I wrong?
No, and I'll also ask Mr. Merriman to weigh in, but in particular on this building, I think mostly it's talking about the exterior features, that sort of thing. So while, yes, a building permit, when it's issued, does kind of just come to Heritage to make sure everything is copacetic. I think we recently did one in relation to a set of stairs. We went ahead, issued the building permit because it wasn't part of the historical designation. And then we just discussed it here for information only. So yeah, and I don't think in that particular case you have to have a historical engineer or that sort of thing.
The only way you would have to is if, because say for some reason, the guards in your attic were deemed to be the crucial feature that was recognized in the bylaw, then at that point it would be incumbent upon us to make sure that you're replacing it the exact way it came out of, right? So you often need help with that, but in general, whatever gets recognized in the bylaw is what the building department is looking at.
You can't replace the things exactly the way anymore.
Actually, you pretty much can. So it just takes a little more work and a little bit more.
We just changed the sink. We can't replace that sink. It was a huge, great, big, tall porcelain sink, but it was all rotten. And the drain was completely rotten in it, but it also had the metal pockmarks were coming through the porcelain and stuff. But I can't replace that sink because I couldn't get one.
And
So
so,
things like that, like what am I gonna do?
Again, but if it's not recognized in the bylaw as being a key feature, that's not an
Well,
issue.
I really don't want it to be heritage. I wouldn't buy it if it was. I wouldn't be able to sell it if it was.
Louis?
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, I'm a big believer in private property rights. If you don't have the money or the
I'm sorry,
means.
I don't speak.
I'm a big believer in private property rights, right? So
Yes.
a lot of what happens with a lot of heritage buildings, and I see it in downtown Toronto, Kingston and Ottawa, is developers come in, that's gonna cost me 300 grand to put it down. I'll find every excuse to let it rot sit and then I'll put a shovel down to it. That's what happens. That's my issue with any downtown building, right? We keep, a lot of municipalities keep shoving it down the throat of people to keep it heritage. They run out of money, they leave it saying, their kids take over, they have no money, no vision, no heritage to do it, and it sits down, right? I would agree with you. I mean, you have enough of a problem on the north end of the wall that you might have to take that wall down because it's gonna become a safety issue. It might fall into somebody on the
I might
sidewalk
have to take down that wall.
are coming down. And seeing from the pictures when you were trying to sell it, yeah, you did do a lot of work on the interior work.
Yes, I am. And
I see it from the problem that it is a big house. Any sort of designation, I mean, it might hurt somebody, it might hurt you for the resale. And it's hard enough right now to sell a house with an interest rate of 8% for the next 2-3 years of
we
anybody.
did have a buyer. He wanted to make it in apartments, which of course is not allowed. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make it into 3 apartments. And I told him right from the start, I said, you're not gonna get that passed because and I didn't want it passed. I didn't want to see the house cut up. I don't want to see the house cut up. I don't want to see anything happen to this house. This house is beautiful and it's absolutely gorgeous. I even have pictures of it before the porch went on the back. I have pictures of it from before, from the neighbors. I have calendars in it from the 1800s on the walls. And I have all kinds of things in this house that we would love to have people come in. This was the whole idea of the tea room was we could put these things on the wall and have a tea room and people could come in because it's an absolutely beautiful house to see now. Except I have to change the wallpaper in the living room because it's pretty tacked. But it really is lovely. But I can't do those things, but at least the bed and breakfast, it looks like we could move forward because I do have the parking.
Yeah.
I have to get the Department of Health, but that's possible.
Lee, you had a comment?
Yeah, this house is very similar to 3 others in the same neighborhood. The one across the road, the one on the northeast corner of Dibble and Edward, and of course the one across the road from it. If you just take a quick look, you would say they're all the same, but they're all a little different in their extremities, maybe I should say. The one across the road from you has a small addition on the back. Years ago, that was all filled in all the way back. That wasn't a carport. That was all
That's correct.
interior stone. The one to the east of you used to have a stone wall that came out the back of it. And there was a gap that went to that stone carriage house, I guess I would call it. And then, of course, the one on the other side of Edward Street, the whole back end of it's new. The back end that was on it was torn off. And quite frankly, I don't think that was original either from the look of it. So my point here is that you have 4 houses that from the front look much the same. They're probably built by the same person. But what makes them different is not so much the front, but what's on the back, what's happened to them. And in this particular case, your house, the use of it as the merchant's bank, the first bank in Prescott, is the key, I would say, the unique thing. And I was in that house. Going back to my days in flooring, I did flooring in that house when Sadie was there. And you said you had 150 squirrels and no cats. Well, it was 150 cats in those days and no squirrels. Yeah.
Even Sadie was there, I've heard that.
Yeah, it was quite an odor in that house. In any case, I guess what I'm saying is the other 3 houses have had considerable renovations to them.
Yes,
They're not.
not mine.
No, but that's simply because you, the right person, hasn't been there yet. And hopefully the renovations that you do will continue to upgrade the house, because it did reach a point where it was not a very nice.
Well, Mr. Pennock's house across the street is a twin to mine, but smaller. And I've been in it today. I'm in it all the time because Mr. Pennock's 80 and I'm feeding him. Anyway, it's quite funny. We have a dish and it goes back and forth constantly. But his is all painted. The floors have been all done like these floors. Everything. He's so sorry. He's all upset. The kitchen's the modern convenience kitchen. It's gorgeous. He's so sorry. He says if he'd known mine was coming for sale, he'd have bought mine, because he's 80 years old and he wanted the wood. He tried to take down the wood, but the trouble with the painted, and I have this problem in the back of the house, it's lead paint. I do have to paint those floors that have lead paint. I cannot take the lead paint up. I have looked into this. Seriously, I even talked to the president of Bear Paint to see if there's some way to get this off. He says, get a hazmat suit. And he said, don't live there. You can actually not live after you sand down the lead paint in that building, because it gets in everything, the lead paint, and it makes you sick. He said, just paint over it. So, but it is very small. It's only a hall and 1 bedroom that has to be painted. The rest of it doesn't. The rest of the wood, it looks like it was something else besides lead paint. It was a different kind of paint, but it's still 100 years old. So this is the only thing that we're painting. The front of the house, there's no paint.
Well,
It's the windows.
we've had houses that are historically designated, and as one of these gentlemen said, I can't remember which now, a feature or features on the inside has been designated
I'm
as
sorry,
well.
I'm sorry. I've got really have problems.
Okay. We have had house or houses that have been designated
Yes.
before, and they have had interior specifically things mentioned, as well as the exterior features of the house. In those cases, if you wanted to do something like put a sink in, if it had been the sink that had been designated, you would not be able to do it unless you had permission.
Yes.
Other things you can do. It was mentioned a stairway that we had approved for a house at this committee and meeting her a couple meetings ago. It was a safety issue. The stairway was ridiculous and it wasn't original anyway. So we approved a stairway that was safe and actually blended in well with the house. So you're feeling that you can't do anything. That's not correct. You can. But I can understand your feeling, and I agree with Louis over here as far as hamstringing people goes. I think if I remember correctly in reading, the Historical Society was not a unanimous decision on yours. And I don't know, depends on how we feel, whether we'll have a unanimous decision or not. But I certainly appreciate the comments that you make, and they definitely will be taken into consideration. But don't give up on the house by all means. We need people like you that come in and are prepared to work on things, and we should be prepared to work with you on them.
Well, it's a beautiful house, and it's a shame that all that damage was done. Like, it really is a shame that it was, you know, and the thing is now you can't even see it. Like, you know, you don't even know, the upstairs, 2 doors upstairs haven't been finished. You can see the squirrels ate them. And, but the rest of it, you'd never know now that they were even in the house. So it's coming, but it's going to take probably another $100,000 worth of restoration, but it's the back part with the stone that's a serious problem. And we would definitely get a permit if we were going to take it down, because it might come to that. The beams going across are rotting. And we plan on covering it with tin this year, but I don't think it's going to save them now, because nobody ever covered them. And they have been out exposed. I don't know when somebody took the roof off.
You're talking the
There's no roof.
okay, that roof's been out there for years.
There's no roof. There never has been. Not probably 30 years or 40 years. There's been no roof on that building.
I agree.
So there's beams, the big barn beams that are in there have all rotten through. So I'm going to cover them with tin and try and save them with supports, but I don't know if I can. I probably need a permit for that.
I was going to make the same comments as Lee about your suggestion for apartments. Perhaps apartments are not within the zoning bylaws at the moment, but that doesn't mean that you can't make an appeal to have that property changed.
I don't want apartments. I'm
Oh,
fine
I
with the
thought you
bed and
said-
breakfast. I don't want the apartments. I was selling it to someone who wanted to put it into apartments, into 3 apartments.
I misunderstood.
And I wasn't happy with that. I think they were going to tear out the staircase, do different things to the house, and it would ruin the house. You know, I've seen them done, and they, you know, stuff, it does ruin the house. I wasn't thrilled about that. My real estate agent was.
Okay.
So,
So long story short, you don't want it recognized as a heritage.
pardon, I'm sorry.
Long story short, ma'am, you don't want it recognized as a heritage building.
Designated.
You don't want it designated for heritage. Like you don't want it recognized as a heritage.
No,
Okay,
no.
all right.
Not at all.
right.
A house of interest, I'm fine with. I can see that. We have people come and look in the windows all the time. They come out like this, and they look at the windows. It's actually quite funny. I just back up, let them, you know. And many people knock on the door and ask if they can see the house, which is fine. You just let them in, let them see the house. I don't mind, you know. And I wouldn't even mind having an open house at any time, like if people wanted to, because I know they have yard things, but do they have that here, that the people walk through the old houses?
Well, they have the open doors.
Pardon?
They have the open doors there
Yeah,
where
like if
people
they
can
have
go
that,
from place to place.
You know, if somebody let me know, I'd certainly do that too, like that, so people could come in and see it. Because it really is neat, it really is. It's, you know,
Okay, so we'll take note of all your comments.
All right.
Okay,
I'll shut up and get out of here.
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next property is 491 James Street West. And Jenny or Joe, do you have any comments at your house?
We're just happy that it's no designation. We love history and try to maintain it, but we don't want it designated.
Okay. You have any comments?
Probably couldn't be a better property in the town of Prescott, owned by proper people to be designated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always one of the best maintained properties in the town, and obviously Joe and Jen have this love for the property and heritage. So that one should be an easy decision.
Lee?
Well, strangely enough, I spent quite a bit of time in that house as well.
Yes, you did.
I spent 10 years after school and on weekends and summers working in the gardens around this place. I was everything from a chauffeur for the Beaumonts to a hedge trimmer. And I can't believe that those hedges were old when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the Dutch gentleman trimmed them, and I trimmed them for about 10 years, and then you took over and you've done an excellent job ever since. But this house as well is not the way it was built. There was a fire here. I remember Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont telling me about after the fire, they always said, so what is the garage today? It was likely a summer kitchen because I don't know if it's still there or not, but there used to be a stairway going upstairs as you would have from a summer kitchen. The sunroom on the south side is an addition that wouldn't have been there. But the key with this house is whenever anything's been done to it, it's been done tastefully and with the original structure and shape of the house in mind. So whenever something's done, even that rubber roof you guys put on, it looks like it came on the house, you know? So it's just a wonderful property, and I'm very glad it's in the neighborhood and has been maintained from what I remember as a child.
Anybody else have any comments? Committee? No? Okay, so moving on to the next property, 590 George Street. Or do you have any comments?
None in particular. I'm just sort of here to hear about this. It was sort of suggested maybe that it would be certain elements that would be recognized and others that weren't. Like she was sort of implying that it's the entire house and you can't change a railing, but the understanding would be like, oh, maybe the stonework. We did have some questions around that. I think the exterior, and I could be wrong on this, I think the exterior was originally stucco. So it would have come up to the quoins, there's trim around the windows that's held on with rectangular nails, it's quarter round. But it comes out and adds some depth to the windows, and then it would have gone up to the flat wood trim at the top. So we don't want to change the stone. The only thing that we were thinking was, well, in 50 years, if climate change is really going nuts and the price of natural gas is through the roof, the only thing you can do with these houses is insulate from the outside. If you insulate from the inside, all the wood timber rots out. They've done studies on this, right? So that was the only sort of concern I had when I heard about it. We don't want to change the wood trim. We don't want to change the stone. But if it came down to, well, we can't afford heating and cooling here anymore, not that there's AC right now anyway. My father made the counterpoint that, well, the amount of money you'd spend to retrofit it and insulate, it would take years and years of gas bill savings to make that back anyway. So those are our main sort of thoughts when we heard about the potential designation. But
Does the committee have any comments?
You've done a
Lee?
beautiful job fixing up the old, sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
You've done a beautiful job fixing up the old sign. Did you do it personally?
fixing up the old
The stonework and the,
stone was pretty good. I've got to do some patching on it, but it was repointed, I think the back 10, 15 years ago. And that's when they actually took the stucco off the back.
Right.
We've painted all the trim. It was down to the wood in some spots when we got there 2 years ago. So
it's a shame to see it stuck over it now.
yeah, no, we much prefer the stone look too, and we do not want it. But like it was just like either leave the house or insulate from the outside, but that's not a concern for right now at all.
Lee, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I was gonna ask you how long you actually owned the house.
We've just been there 2 years.
Okay, I was gonna say, because Yeah, this stuccoing or de-stuccoing and cleaning of the stone has been going on for a while. It wasn't a started today, finished tomorrow type of thing. And the corner, there's a proper name for those.
Wings, I think, maybe not.
There you go. Did you do those? Did you done anything to those?
No.
Okay, well, some of those have been replaced, and if you notice, they're a different color than others.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it a huge, like, is it a big thick stone or is it a fascia?
Our expert over there is maybe, do you know?
Yeah,
Honestly,
so
I don't
like
know.
corner keystones, so like 3 stones from the top of the fascia on the soffit. I think that's where Lee's talking about, where it looks like a different discoloration, but it was probably done before you, like you were saying.
Yeah, we haven't changed any. Some of them are cracked. I just filled it with some
Water.
sanded grout or whatever to just keep water from going in, but I wasn't sure if it was, if it was like an L shape in behind or if it was a big solid chunk.
I've done a nice job painting all that trim work over the years, and you just poured your porch the last couple of days, right?
Yeah.
So that must feel good.
Yeah.
Back then.
If you notice the wood trim on this, and actually if you look at the appearance of this house with the small second floor windows, it's virtually identical to the brick house that Joe, we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Very, very similar. That little fancy, I forget what you call it, but it's kind of a diamond wood trim. This one has it as well. Those little windows on the second floor, this one has it as well. It's kind of interesting. One's stone and the other's brick, and they're about the same vintage as well.
Yeah. I actually stopped and talked to Joe one day when he was trimming his hedges because he had some of the same trim and I said, we're curious about this and that.
Yeah. Well, remember, Joe, this might be for your interest in, it's the corner pieces that I'm talking about that are off color. The ones on his house are not off color, they're all original. And when he did flagstone around his pool, he told me he tracked down the quarry that came from.
Right.
And the flagstone is the same stone that's on the corner of his house.
Nice.
That's how dedicated he is.
Right.
And his home, yeah. But that's a nice house. It's had some nice improvements over the years. I remember when it was, what color was it blue or something? Blue stucco?
I think it had a blue tint to it, didn't it?
I don't know, blue or gray, I forget, but it certainly looks nicer stone.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
So does anyone have any new business they'd like to bring forward?
We have one.
Oh, sorry. Everybody laughs. Louis?
Yeah, no, like I was telling you before, I just gotta leave because I
Okay.
have appointment. I apologize, I just had something that type on the same day. See you guys later. I'll review that paperwork and I'll send it to you the week prior to the next meeting.
So 3, Madam Chair, so everyone is aware, I'll send out an email, just kind of outlining maybe a date to send them in. If you have any questions, please feel free. And I'll send all the extra information as well, so including the Granville Historical Society's checklist. This is a.
Yeah, and I'll go through that book. Thank you very much for that book. All right, Sean, have a good one, folks.
Okay, so the last house is 408 East Street.
Anyway,
You guys have any comments on this house?
I didn't do any work in this one.
No?
Wow. Actually, what I found interesting in this is the description of this Mr. Higgins, or O. Higgins, as he changed his name to. Kind of wonder if maybe you found out his originally family name was O. Higgins or something and flipped it back. Anyway, the carriage house, which is the carriage house. Now, it doesn't mention the carriage house as far as being designated goes, but he had that added, and it originally housed his Rolls Royce with the chauffeur in the apartment upstairs.
Oh, wow.
Now, how many houses in Prescott would have a garage built for a Rolls Royce with a chauffeur?
Wow, that's neat, eh?
Anyway, it's one of those things that's been added on to change, like a lot of the historical houses we have in town. A lot of them are not the way they were built. They were
Yeah.
probably not of much interest the way they were built. It's the additions that made them what they are today.
Yeah.
Certainly has an awful lot of beautiful woodwork on the interior.
Oh, yeah.
So does anyone have any new business they'd like to bring forward?
A question. In speaking with Fraser, I broached the subject about a property, and I was curious of why the Heritage Committee that he was a part of, which did a lot of work, never considered it, or did they, for mention, designation, or whatever, and I got the feeling that he just never thought of it, but referring to is the building that we're sitting in. The cornerstone says 1930. It's almost 100 years old. This is an excellent example of early 20th century school architecture, and it has been maintained, maybe not intentionally outside, but certainly after the renovation it had a number of years ago, as I mean, the windows are the same size, same shape.
Yeah, it's a building that you can find 100 times across this province.
Exactly, but they don't all look like this one. But they haven't been maintained in much the original condition. So my question or comment, maybe something that we can think about, is we have this list of suggestions, essentially. Can we add to it? If anybody on this committee would like to add something to the list for consideration for designation, can we do that?
Lindsay?
So through you, Madam Chair. I mean, that is definitely something that the committee's responsible for, right? If there's interest or something, property that maybe has potential to be designated or be on the list of interest for cultural purposes, then that's, where the recommendation would come from. As we can keep it on the list. My suggestion would be to address these 25 first. And then if this is as example, if this one is a property that the committee would want to recommend as an interest property, then it could start the process in that way. Because once you put it on the interest, it's able to sit there for a little bit, then to take the time to consider if, the committee wants to recommend it for designation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's no questions for the media. Item 8 is adjournment. I have a recommendation that the Prescott Heritage Committee meeting be adjourned. The time is 5:49. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this motion?
Actually, can I ask a question before you do?
Sure.
Do we have any response at all from the people that own?
Madam Chair, I hadn't received responses from any members of the public via email or phone call. They just attended. So I didn't hear anything from the owners of 408 East, but Caitlin and I did mail and hand delivered letters, and we intend to do the same for the next, just to ensure that everybody has notice.
So hand delivered means hand delivered.
Not directly to a person, in a mailbox, in a door, but not everybody was home through the day when we went through, excuse me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Ray, seconded by Lee. All in favor?